Good evening, and welcome to What's Your Story? I'm your host, James Ransom Reed Jr. We have a very special guest with us tonight, Terri Wilson. She is the president of the Avon Historical Society. And if you love history, this is your show. So get on the couch or get in your favorite chair, kick off those shoes, get your favorite beverage, sit back, and drink in the magic that is history. Harry Truman said, the only thing new in the world is the history that you don't know. Let's see if we can teach you some new things tonight. Welcome to the show, Terri.
Thank you. No pressure, Jim.
No pressure, no pressure. Terri, why is it important to have a historical society? Why does society need a historical society? Why?
Society needs a historical society to keep the local history present every day in our lives. America is, of course, a young country compared to the rest of the world, and our history is pretty complex in a very short period of time. And I think it's important that we keep that front and center in people's minds. And not only just the local, but how our local towns interacted in the state and the national level on everything that's gone on in the last 400 years that this country has been here with the arrival of the English. Obviously, we know that for about 15,000 years, people have lived on this continent, and we know that it's taken a very long time to develop it and to live it, and through a lot of climate changes, it's evolved over time. When the English arrived 400 years ago, and the Dutch here prior to that, and the Spanish even before that, they brought with them some new ideas and some new ways of living. And we have created a country that really is truly an experiment. I really believe that. I have a background in working in politics and government, and I love our democracy. I love our country. I truly believe that we are going through some changes, not unlike what we've had done in the past. And we need to kind of remember where those are and put them in context for today. And I think local historical societies play a role in that in a very special way for people who are living in each town and each village.
And you and I are obviously lovers of history, but I run into people and you talk history and their eyes glaze over. Okay, what's the excitement in that? What is it that grabs us, and how can we get those people whose eyes glaze over to grab onto it too?
I think you have to hit them with something they haven't heard before so that they say, wow. Right now in Avon, Connecticut, we have a big wow story going on. In 2019, the state of Connecticut Department of Transportation began building a bridge over the Farmington River here in Avon. And because there's federal dollars involved, there had to be a survey of the land that was going to be dug. That survey turned up a 12,500-year-old Paleo-Indian site. This is huge for us. I never thought, as a president of a local historical society in a New England town, I would even be thinking about what was going on here 12,500 years ago.
Absolutely.
So when I say to people that there were people living, working, and producing tools, trading, hunting caribou, hunting deer, and living among mastodons and mammoths on this land, as a matter of fact, not far from where this studio is, their eyes just kind of not glaze over, but pop. And that's what I'm looking for. I want the pop. I want people to say, really? How could that be? And you have to start getting them into the idea that, you know, our history is long, our history is deep. And I mean deep that way because that site was found almost 6 feet under. And so, yeah, that's gets me excited is watching other people get excited. So when we were talking that day, and I was just telling you about all the different things that have been going on in Avon and in the Farmington Valley area of Connecticut, it's exciting because we have new things to discover all the time. And who knew? Who really knew? So.
You don't normally think of Avon, Connecticut as a font of history.
Right.
How wrong could I be?
Very wrong.
Okay.
We're in New England. We have some pretty rich history here. And a lot of that's going to become very apparent in a few years when we have our semi-quincentennial, which is the 250th of our country in 2026. Bet you never heard that word before.
No, I didn't.
Semi-quincentennial.
No, I
love
didn't.
saying it. It's rolling off better and better now.
All right.
I saw my first ad on TV for it during a football game a few weeks ago. The Congress has created a semi-quincentennial commission, and all the states are asked to put together commissions in order to celebrate that. What that is what we had almost 50 years ago, the bicentennial. And those of us who are a little bit older certainly remember that time. And the bicentennial was the time in 1976 when we were really going through a change in this country. You know, it was just coming out of the Vietnam War. We were dealing with the civil rights movement. We were dealing with a whole lot of, should I say, the sexual revolution was going on. And a lot of us who were in high school, we were, told this is a new country. We're entering a new country is happening because the bicentennial was coming. People had fervor for American history in 1976. It was cool. It was fun. There were parades. There were events. There were things. There were bicentennial things to purchase: ties, hats, clothes, everything under the sun. People got into their local history. That's when a lot of historical societies really shined, because they took advantage of that, and no doubt they should have. And so our historical society started in 1974, just before the bicentennial, in the lead up, and they planned it so they could open up a building in 1976 to take advantage of that national feel we had for what our country was all about. So that's going to happen again in 2026, which is right around the corner. And I think that this is another time when we could take advantage of it to bring our American history back out. And this time, however, and I'm not saying this because of the discovery of the Paleo-Indian site, but this time we must include the indigenous story. We must include the ancient prehistoric story that we have in this country. So we're taking part in that by having a webinar series last year and this coming year, and on the topic of what was going on here 12,500 years ago. And I think it's important we understand that history as well, and what happened up to contact time with the English.
A couple of weeks ago, I had the pleasure of going to the Women's Hall of Fame in Seneca Falls, New York. Mm-hmm. What a magnificent experience. And if you haven't been, I certainly recommend it, and I recommend it for you too. Mm-hmm. If you get a chance, go to the Women's Hall of Fame or the Women's History Museum in Seneca Falls, New York.
Right.
Let me know if I'm right. You'll love it. Women's roles in history. Want to talk to me about that? And please.
Well, I'm not an expert in it, but last year, 2020, was the 100th anniversary of the amendment, 19th Amendment, allowing for women to vote. Now, I'm going to say that with a caution. Not all women got the right to vote for that, as we know. So we need to be careful how we say that. The majority of women in the country did get the right to vote with that amendment.
Which women were excluded?
Mostly black women, and mostly in the South. Now, having said that, you asked about women's history. I am not a women's history expert, but in planning for a whole lot of events that we were going to have in 2020 at the Avon Historical Society, the Avon Library, and the Avon Senior Center, we put together a committee in 2019 to work on programming, to have speakers and interpreters and exhibits and all of that, which of course all got canceled because of the pandemic, except for some of our speakers and our book talks. We just pivoted right to webinars and had everything on Zoom. So we still accomplished our goal. But in the planning, we learned all about women's roles, not only from the beginning of the suffrage movement, but prior to that with the abolition movement back in the early 1800s, early 19th century, where women started to have a voice, and they were not going to be suppressed. They wanted to be heard. This was going on worldwide. It wasn't unique to the United States at all. It came, England had their suffrage movement going on as early as that, Australia, New Zealand. And we were not the first country to pass an amendment to allow women to vote either. We were about the 7th, I think, overall. And the most recent country to allow women to vote, I think, was Saudi Arabia in 2015. So it's taken a very long time.
To drive cars.
And to drive cars, yeah. So it's a long time. But women have participated way back, long time, in our country's history and in the world to bring the rights of not only women in again, with slavery, but in working rights and child rights and union causes, and especially around here, Some women who got involved, especially the African American women who got involved in the care and health of tobacco workers 100 years ago in this northern part of Connecticut here. There was a big movement to try to help them with their wages and their hours because men were working long time in the fields, and it was hard. So these things all are part and parcel of a much bigger story. So women have played a long time role in history, and we have not been quiet about it, and we're not quiet about it now.
No, I suspect not. You know, when I think about Avon,
Yep.
no disrespect intended, or Farmington, or those places, I have a tendency to think of largely white people. Okay, you're a white person and a lover of history. Now, if I couldn't imagine myself thinking that a black person played a role in the history of the development of Avon or Farmington or Canton or any of those places up there. As the president of the Historical Society, I know that you believe in truth. You've got to tell the whole story.
That's right.
If you don't tell the whole story, you've done a disservice to those people who are learning from you, to those people who are depending on you, to those people you are educating. So you got to tell the whole story. How have you dealt with that? Have you been confronted or have you run into?
Sure.
Yeah, please.
Oh, absolutely. Over the last 2 years, with everything that's gone on in this country in 2018, 19, and 20, with the movement almost going back to the civil rights movement, small towns like Avon, which were farming communities early on, and were not big enough, they were not commercial centers. They stayed very rural. And so, yes, we have been asked, what is your story? What is your black story? Where are the slaves in town? Who owned them? What was going on? Well, we've dug as deep as we possibly can.
Using the census.
Using the census, using letters, using diaries, using wills, probate records, and there really wasn't much to find. Now, you just said about the truth. The truth is that some of the towns just literally don't have this kind of a history. We don't have that history that people think we should have. I am a local historian. I'm an amateur historian, not trained. I don't want to change a story to fit a narrative.
Oh, no.
You cannot do that.
If the truth is that you didn't have it, you didn't have it.
It is the way it is.
Yes,
now,
exactly.
Do we know there were some black leaders, Asian leaders, foreign leaders in these towns? Of course. We had people come from all over the place. I mean, we're a melting pot. Yes, they're the standing order of the Congregationalist ministers and their families for almost 200 years ruled this state, and until the 1818 convention that changed our Constitution. But having said that, sure, there were folks that were involved in the community, and I think you're leading up to one in particular from Avon, which is Private Leverett Holden, who was a black Civil War soldier in the Connecticut 29th, who I discovered, although people probably knew about him, but I discovered and dug deep into his life during the Civil War commemoration in 2011 to 2015. So is that where you're leading to get into a little
eventually
bit?
I'm going to get to there because we got a two-parter here.
Oh, we got a two-parter.
That's right.
Okay, go.
The thing, excuse me, the thing that I am most fascinated by with you and your enthusiasm for history, I've said this to you several times, you don't only like history, you love it. You love getting in there, finding the nuts, the bolts.
Oh, yeah.
That's who you are. That's what you do. You do really a magnificent service for the people, period, in Connecticut with history.
Thank you.
Leading up to that, here's what I'd like to ask you. Are you disappointed in some of the history you found?
No.
All right.
Not at all. History is what happened before, and why would I be upset with it? It's going to be what it is, and we can't change it, so why should I get upset about it? In other words, I should learn about it, try to figure out how to disseminate the information out, and look at both sides equally. What are the pros and cons of it? No, I don't. Should I? Is that
No,
that's
no,
what you're
I'm just
thinking?
wondering.
I don't think
No,
I should.
No, I'm just wondering how it impacts you when you read about, say, the subjugation of women, or you read about the brutality of slavery, and you tell the truth about it, but you're human, so you may have to look at it and go, wow, this is our story, this is what we did. So I know from a fact, for me, when I've read certain histories, and I watch Henry Louis Gates, I'm sure you have,
Yep.
some of that stuff is very emotional to me, watching what he does and what he found and the connection that we have. You know, I'm connected to you historically in ways that we don't even know.
Of course.
You know.
Of course.
And that is the fascinating thing to me, that we are connected. History doesn't know you're a white woman and I'm a black man, and it doesn't care. History knows this is what it is, and that's what the point of the whole thing is about.
This pandemic has been the great equalizer for history.
How so?
Everybody is susceptible.
Nobody escapes.
Nobody escapes. We're not escaping it at all, whether you're black, white, brown, young, old, everybody. Everybody is susceptible in one way or the other if we're not careful. And this has just become, because everybody across the board of every age and every ethnicity, somebody has passed away from this. So it is, as far as I'm concerned, it has equalized us. And thank goodness the medical community has decided to work together, not individually, to come together, to quickly study, quickly figure out, has it all been done right? Who knows? We're not going to know. But you know what? That's okay.
That's okay.
We're humans. We have the capability, we have the knowledge, we have the skills, and science is on our side. And we need to just keep following the dots to get there. That's one of my favorite things in history, is connecting dots. This pandemic has been connecting dots, and that's what's been happening. It's been putting it into the right places. We, as humans and as a governmental organization in this country, we need to do what's best for the world, for us and the world, and we need to follow the world. If another country takes the lead, we should just go with it. I mean, right now, as you and I are talking, and I know this show will be seen much later on, we're just finding out about this new strain, Omicron. And by the time people see this, we will know a lot more. But as of today, where you and I are sitting right now, it's only a few days old. We don't know enough, but I guarantee that the science community will have this figured out in a very short time, because they learned how to collaborate and get together when the coronavirus hit and figure out what to do next and how to handle it. And thank goodness they did. But it's the great equalizer. And history is the great equalizer.
I like that. History is a great equalizer.
Is a great equalizer. Yeah. Now, and what goes around is going to come around. We all know that. Anybody that knows history knows that what goes around comes around. And in politics, it's the same thing. You know, I'm with a party right now that's not too popular with people in Connecticut. And I'm not saying that I support everything the party does. I'm ashamed, quite frankly, at some of the things that have happened. But politics is cyclical. And what goes around is going to come around. Okay, so maybe some towns turned a different way. Maybe the country's going a little different way. Guess what? It's all going to come back. Because there's enough of us who believe in the democracy. And a democracy is run by people. And if we don't like it, we change it. Many countries don't have that option.
Right. We have something called elections.
Elections, that's right.
That's
exactly right.
That's what we've got. We can do it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, when I think of New England, you can go out and drive through New England, and you're going to see practically a church.
On every corner?
On every corner. I wasn't going to go there, but since you did, yeah. When you're doing your studies of history, religion has played a major, major role in the development of events that now we live with, live by, live from. How's that? Is that accurate to say that?
Oh, absolutely. Churches were meeting houses. And the word meeting house itself indicates that they were houses for meeting. And so they were the central location, probably the largest building in most small towns, most small communities early in this country's history.
Who ran the meeting houses?
The ministers. The ministers and the elders of the town.
And who were they?
And they were probably the most educated people who were in town. And they were probably the ones that just decided, you know, what had to be. Now, that comes down from a long-standing English tradition. But it has now evolved and moved away from that. We've moved away from that. But it served well for the period of time that they were developing the country. Not great for the Native Americans who were here, not great for the Irish who came, not great for slavery.
Irish need not apply.
That's right, that's right. However, in Connecticut, the Charter of 1662 was was the one that was hidden in the tree. That stayed in effect.
Charter Oak.
Charter Oak that was hidden in the tree and stayed in the tree was in effect until 1818. That's a long period of time.
It is indeed.
Many generations. And during that time, the leadership of the Congregational church system is what dominated the government and politics and the meetings in town that everybody had. In 1818, that broke it up. We created the three systems and the bicameral legislature, and it grew from there. Thank goodness we did, because our country was already at that point. You know, after the American Revolution, it developed that, and so with the three branches and with the bicameral system, and so we did the same thing years later, and here we are today. But you are absolutely right. Those white churches, and mostly white churches that you see are dotting around New England, were the central location of where decisions were made and big events took place. That's where speakers came and talked. That's where the town leaders spoke. That's where they had court. That's where they held court, because ministers could hold court as well. That's where the witchcraft trials in Connecticut took place, way before Salem, you know, in
Way
Hartford.
before Salem.
Yeah, generations before.
Absolutely.
And but that's how it was. And I don't know, we can't alter it, but that's how it went.
That's how it went.
Yeah.
You know, you might want to tell people how to get in touch with you.
Oh, you can find me at the Avon Historical Society website, which is avonhistoricalsociety.org. You can go on there and you'll find out about who we are, who our board of directors is. You can contact me at president@avonhistoricalsociety.org. You can leave a message through Facebook as well. We have a Facebook page. So feel free to contact us anytime you need to.
Where would you send somebody to learn about history in Connecticut? What place would you send them?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
I know. I got to do one of those.
All right, well, I have to ask back. What history do you want them to learn?
Well, I would like to learn about the government and the Capitol.
Okay, you need to start at the old State House in Hartford. The old State House, built in 1796.
Where they sold slaves out front.
Yes,
Yes.
I believe they absolutely did.
Yes, they absolutely did.
At that building or the building before that?
It was that building.
It was that building, 1796, the one that was built by Charles Bulfinch. Okay. Yes, and because it was on the waterfront there, because in the waterfront, the water came kind of right up to the building, not where it is now, where the other buildings are now. I would say that would be the place to start, because that was one of two capitals we had in Connecticut. One was in New Haven and one was in Hartford. And the old State House stands as the legislative capital for Connecticut for up until the new capital was built in 1878. So you could start there. You could see see what the chambers were, the Senate and the House chambers. You can sit in the chairs. They have some original chairs.
Yes, I've been there. Yes.
Okay, yep. I think P.T. Barnum's desk is there as well, because he was a legislator in that building for one session.
Wow.
And for 1 year, I think it was, maybe two. And then I would just go right across town to the State Capitol building, which is a gorgeous building.
Okay.
And the Legislative Office building, which has wonderful history on the walls there about Connecticut government history. So if you want government history, I would go there. Connecticut State Library across the street. It's all in Hartford.
Listen, thank you so much, Terri, for being here. This is just part one. We got a whole nother segment coming up. I am James Ransom Reed, your host, and this is What's Your Story? Everybody has a story. What's yours? Until next time, good night.